Good evening to you from the Netherlands. So I'm going to be talking to you all about what is new in Selenium 4. My name is Nikolai. I'm a senior solutions architect at Sauce Labs. All that ultimately means is I have a deep understanding and passion of test automation. In fact, I love it so much that's why I even started my blog that I run on the weekends because I have nothing better to do. And most importantly, I am an animal lover, and if you don't believe me, I have proof here of me with a cute little goat. So just a quick little flash briefing about what is new in Selenium 4 that we can expect. Selenium 4 is not yet released, but last I spoke to Diego Molina, one of the core contributors to Selenium. He said they hope that by the end of the year it will be released. So there's going to be a fully adopted W3C. According to Simon Stewart, it's going to be mostly a drop-in upgrade. Deprecated code that is currently in Selenium 3 is removed and will no longer exist in Selenium 4. There's going to be a concept of relative locators. There's going to be an upgraded Selenium grid architecture, and there is a new, fresh Selenium IDE. Also, I should note that I try to get the best information that I can, and I got it from the best source that I believe exists, which is Simon Stewart on Selenium 4. So if you want to see him talking about this information as well, there's an excellent presentation on YouTube, and the link is over there. So as he kind of said, it should be a drop-in upgrade for most of us, meaning basically you just change the version, you recompile the code, and everything should be up and working with a few caveats. So desired capabilities, for example, in .NET are deprecated right now in version 3. So in version 4, because they're deprecated, that means they're going to be totally gone. It means you will not be able to use desired capabilities. Instead, you are going to need to use specific browser options, right? You're going to use either Chrome options or Safari options and so on and so forth. In Java, that's not 100% true because Java doesn't have the concept. They do have the concept of desired capabilities, but you'll basically just need to switch over to mutable capabilities, which is what exists in Selenium 4. And I'll show you guys demonstrations of all of this as well. So expected conditions as well are deprecated in .NET at least. Java is always a little bit more backwards looking, so they're slower to adopt the changes that I think the other language bindings do adopt, but at least in .NET, for example, expected conditions are gone, but that doesn't mean that they are not usable anymore. All it simply means is that they won't be in Selenium.WebDriver NuGet package. Instead, they'll be in a totally different NuGet package, which I'll show you guys about. I get a lot of questions about this one specifically because when we run our test, we get this deprecation warning. Finds by name is gone from the Java bindings. Find element by name is gone. Page factory is also deprecated. .NET, it's moved to a different library, but to be honest, even the Selenium contributors aren't very happy about the implementation of Page Factory. That's one of the reasons why they're moving it out of the core Java bindings. And so overall, I don't really recommend that we use it in general, but just so you know that if you do migrate to 4, you'll need to pull in new packages. Java, it's not gone yet, but it will be in the future. So let's take a look at all of this stuff that I just talked about. So here we can see I've got a Selenium 3.14159 dependency. So that's the current latest version of Selenium. Here we have our Selenium 3 test. And here are just some of the things that are being deprecated. So one of the things that's being deprecated is the WebDriver wait method actually will be updated. This timeout in seconds will be replaced. So instead of passing in just an integer, you'll be passing in an object. I'll show you guys how to do that. So as I mentioned before, finds by name class is gone. Finds by find element by name is also deprecated. And so I'll show you how to fix it, which should be pretty easy. So if we just change this to version 4.alpha 6 is the current latest release. And then let's reload all of our Maven projects and recompile. Come back to the Selenium 3 test. Cool. So, did I rebuild? Let me invalidate caches. Sometimes things get cached and let me clear the caches, restart. Sometimes it happens, no big deal. And this is the fun of a live demo. Stuff can never works as you expect it to. So here you can see that there's a deprecation warning. So instead, how it's going to work in Selenium 4 is it should be a duration object of seconds. And you can set here 10, for example. So see, no more deprecation warning here. You can see that the finds by name is gone. So we can just get rid of that. This one fixes really simple. So you just replace this with driver dot, no more find element by name. It's simply find element. And then you just do by dot name. There you go. And then of course you can pass in whatever name that is. There you go. Cool. So that's really how you would fix it, at least for the Java issues. And I think those are the major Java issues. For .NET, as I talked about, expected conditions and page object factory is gone. So for .NET, you would just install .NET Selenium Extras NuGet package, and that will solve your issues there. Oh, and by the way, feel free to ask questions in the chat. I will make sure to leave time at the end to tackle them. Cool. Then there's another concept in Selenium that is called relative locators. So relative locators are pretty cool. You can basically think of being able to find a locator that's next to another locator, right? Maybe you will have a button that's next to a login field or below or above, right off, left off. So these are all of the relative locators that Selenium is going to provide us here. And let me actually show you those. So get rid of my changes. All right, so here I have a new package. Let me rebuild this as well. And you, this is using Selenium version alpha 6. And if you come here to Selenium 4 test, this is the exact same test you saw before. There's refactor to Selenium 4. And here are relative locators and how to use them. So you can see that, for example, here we'll have our web element that we always find. And then if you want to find an element that is below it, you can find an element using a method with tag name. And then you can say below or above and so on and so forth, right? And so we're basically finding an element that has a tag name that's above our password field. Now, unfortunately, this doesn't currently work in alpha 6. I wish it did, and I could run it for you and show you. And I can run and show you the error that we get. And after a little bit of digging, I found out that there is a bug that has been logged. And the bug is here. I'll share the code in the presentation afterwards. And it's actually likely to get fixed in 7 alpha. So the next release, which should be happening pretty soon. I know that the Selenium Technical Committee just met, and all they're really waiting for is Jim Evans and the .NET bindings to catch up to what all the other bindings are doing. And as soon as that's ready, they'll release a 0.7 alpha likely, or the first beta. And then I'm assuming that this will be fixed there and it will be able to actually use and run with the relative locators. But right now they fail complaining about an illegal type of exception. But when you guys are ready to do it and whenever there is a new release, this is how you would do it. And it's pretty easy, and hopefully it makes our automation more stable and more efficient. All right, let's talk about Selenium IDE. So Selenium IDE is a record and a replay test automation tool that has actually existed for a number of years. It used to be a Firefox extension, and then Firefox got away from their extension mechanism, and so basically that killed Selenium IDE. And Dave Hefner and the Athlete Tools team have been working really hard, and they have brought back Selenium IDE. And to be honest, I was very pleasantly surprised when I started using it myself. I'm a big proponent of coding automation versus record and replay automation. Simply, again, kind of as my boss, Marcus Merrill, says, record and replay automation, not that it's a bad idea. It's just simply we haven't had really good tools to be able to do it. But Selenium IDE does a really fantastic job, and I'll show you guys some of its capabilities. And by the way, if you want to access its documentation, we can show that here. So it's cross-browser. The tests are really easy to record and reuse, and they even have a CLI that you can use to run your tests in parallel. So all you need to do is add a Chrome or Firefox extension. So you can see here, I already have my Chrome extension added, and we're just gonna go ahead and fire it up. And let me show you guys here what's come up. On here is, we got our Selenium IDE, and we get a bunch of different options that we can choose. So we can choose to record a new test and a new project. Let's give that a shot. Let's call that sauce demo. And then which URL are we going to use? We're going to use our sauce demo app. And now we'll start recording. And so right here, you can see that it pulls up our application, and we can actually just start interacting with it. So let's go ahead and grab standard user and do secret sauce, and then log in. Oh, I might have misspelled something. Weird, 1 second. There you go, finally got it right. So we can log in and maybe just click here to make sure. So here we can see a recording of our test. Unfortunately, I messed it up by typing in so many times, so we can likely get rid of a bunch of steps. But let's run it and see what happens actually. So we can stop the recording. Let's call it should log in. Okay, and let's run it. See what happens. So you can see how pretty accurate and stable that was, right? It even recreated all of my errors. So that's one thing that I really like about it, is it is very accurate. You could also see how fast it was, right? That test took less than a second. So you can see here we started at 229 and then ended, so that was what, like 6 seconds. Really fast test, really stable. So it's really nice for recording. Now also the really cool feature that exists here is you can actually export this into code. So we can right click here and say export, and now we can export it into a bunch of different programming languages and unit testing frameworks. So maybe we can export it to Java JUnit. So you can do a bunch of different checkboxes here. We can even export it to use on a Selenium grid. Of course, I'm going to plug in the Sauce Labs Selenium grid, and we can come here and export. Incomplete. Let me see if I messed something up here. Let's try it again. Let me save it. Let me see where there's a missing expected value. It's on the type commands, what it said. Oh, here. How about we just get rid of this step? There you go. All right, awesome. Let's save that. There it's saved. And now let's pull up this code and see what that looks like. So here is our test. You can see that it's captured our driver that we pointed to our Sauce Hub. And you can see that it's captured a bunch of the steps. Of course, not the cleanest test. One of the disadvantages of record and replay tools is they don't interpret your test to be very reusable, but it's an excellent starting point for you to get your locators, learn how to interact with your application, and even get some code going. And you could see, once we reran the test, that it was pretty stable. So I can rerun it again, and it will continue to be very stable, repeating this test, being very fast. So that is available now, and all you guys have to do is, again, grab the Chrome extension or Firefox extension. Cool, and one final thing that I wanted to talk about is this is not 100% related to Selenium 4 and what's new in there, but it is kind of related to the W3C support that is now going to be available in Selenium 4. So most of us end users of Selenium didn't really feel the impact of the W3C protocol. However, if you're familiar with using cloud service providers, Sauce Labs, Browser Stack, and so on and so forth, we are the ones that actually felt the impact of transitioning from the JSON wire protocol to the W3C protocol because a good amount of stuff has changed in there. And so many users might be confused between what do I do with mutable capabilities, what do I do with desired capabilities, how do I put them together to create a session, and so on and so forth. And so here at Sauce Labs, we created an open source software called Sauce Bindings. And it's simply an interface to make working with Sauce Labs extremely simple. And I'll show you guys how to use it and how to get started with a session. And the really beautiful thing about it is that it actually wraps the Selenium API so that in the future, if there are any such changes to W3C, away from W3C, you as a user don't ever have to worry about it. Instead, you just continue to use the bindings, and we will handle all of the complicated interactions for you on our end. So one more demo. So here is an example that I have called Before Sauce Bindings. And this is kind of what we all had to do and currently still have to do in order to get a session going in any cloud provider. So you're going to have setting your Sauce username and access key. You're going to have some kind of a hub to connect to. You're going to have to configure mutable capabilities, set a bunch of stuff there, pass those into a remote web driver, and finally then only you can start running your test. So let's actually run this and make sure that it actually works. So let that run. Let's pull up Sauce Labs here. See that running in Sauce Labs.
And Nikolai, while that's running, there's a question in the Q&A that I can read off to you in a bit when you're ready.
Sounds fantastic. Thanks, Ryan. Cool. So here you see the test ran. No surprise, but it's a good amount of work. And again, as I mentioned, Selenium 4 has caused a lot of confusion around this because some of us are using mutable capabilities, some of us are using desired capabilities. There's Chrome options, Safari options. What do you do with all of that, right? So with sauce bindings, what we made to mitigate that impact is now you can see that we're using our Maven dependency right here. By the way, this is available in Java, Python, and Ruby. Almost available in C#. Unfortunately, I've been a slacker and have not been able to fully finish the C# bindings yet, but it is available in the other 3 major languages. So here you can see all we do is create a new sauce options that we can configure by, for example, setting a build name or setting a test name. And then we create a new session object and we do a session.start that will then return us a driver that we then can use to interact with our browser. So you can see how the code is drastically simplified. We can run this test so that you can see that it's exactly the same. And then we do a lot of other really nice things, like, for example, when you call a session.stop, previously what we all have to do with Selenium is you first have to check if a driver is null, because it's very possible that when you try to start a remote session, that it won't start and instantiate, hence your object will come back as null. And then also if you want to report the results, then you have to call either a JavaScript API or a REST API in order to send results to Sauce Labs. And here, a single command does all of that, and I'll show you in Sauce Labs. So here you can see same exact test. This one gets a green check mark because it actually did get the status of pass. And you can see that it's exactly the same. Opens up our page and finds a button. That's really all there is to it. And stops the session. That's another common challenge that many individuals have had with cloud grid providers is not ending the session. And so this automatically does that for us as well. And really, what's very cool about it is if you just wanted to start without worrying about everything up here, you could actually just start with a single line of code. So if we do here, so here, this single line of code will start a brand new session in Sauce Labs. You have nothing to configure, just simply import your POM, your Maven, or your NuGet, or your pip, and so on, and then one line of code will start a session. I'll show you that I am not making this up. So here, you can see we have a session started less than a minute ago. Of course, it doesn't have the name because we didn't pass it in, but it does start a session on a default of Windows 10 and Chrome, just so you can try it and make sure that everything works. And you can see that our test ran and failed. But it failed because we don't have a session object. And with all of that said, just want to mention that don't forget that Selenium is an open source community. So they work really hard to provide us a nice web testing experience. Here's a bunch of information that you can find about them. You can always help them by logging bugs and testing out the current alpha and beta releases and log those issues here. If you want to contribute code, there's documentation on here of how you can contribute code. They also have a Slack channel where you can go and get help and ask questions. And all of the source code that I used here today is available here. I will now open it up to questions.
All right, so the first question that we see here is, how is it for supporting MS Edge on Chromium, WebDriver, and Selenium 4? With Selenium 3, Selenium tools from Microsoft Edge must be installed. Is this still the requirement for Selenium 4?
Can you repeat that, Ryan?
I think the core of the question is, do you need to have Selenium tools from Microsoft Edge installed for Selenium 4 when you're working with MS Edge, Microsoft Edge, that's using the Chromium driver?
No, Edge driver functions just as all the other drivers. So if you're using, Chrome driver, Firefox driver, Edge driver, you'll simply just pull it in just as you would before, without having to install anything extra. I mean, obviously you have to have an Edge browser, but if you pull in an Edge driver and I had an Edge browser installed on my Mac, which I don't, you can do that. But of course, if you're using a cloud grid provider and you're using something like sauce bindings, you can start configuring your sauce options, and then you can do options dot, let me instantiate it here. Do options dot set browser name, and then you can set browser name, and you can set operating system to Windows, and then you're good to go. Nothing special necessary there.
Great. There's a follow-up that says Edge driver would drive Edge browser, not Edge Chromium browser. So I think what they're talking about is as Microsoft Edge is now adopting the Chromium engine underneath it, how is that impacting the way that we would do these tests?
That's an interesting point. I don't know actually how Edge Chromium comes into play here. I believe that at some point it's just going to replace the old Edge, and it's just going to be Edgium that we're just going to go to, and we use Edge driver, that Edgium will be what runs tied to it.
Let's do this then. Why don't we take that back, and we can answer that in the Slack channel as a follow-on. Jatinder, I see that you're the one that's asking the question, so we'll make sure that we post that in Slack. We'll talk to some of our product and engineering folks as well, just to confirm, and we'll get back to you after this session.
That sounds awesome, Ryan.
Any other questions out there for Nikolai? All right, well, I have a question. So with all of the clients that you've worked with, and the ones that are migrating over to Selenium 4 and getting that in place, what are the biggest challenges that you see? What are the things that you commonly encounter with customers that are kind of low-hanging fruit for them to fix?
At least in terms of C# bindings, the desired capabilities object that we used to configure to hook up to any cloud provider, that's going to disappear. So I recommend just moving over to the driver-specific options, right? So for example, if you had desired capabilities and you were setting your browser to Chrome, now instead you're just going to instantiate Chrome options class and then configure Chrome options as appropriate. So that's a very important one, because that will kill your automation when you transition to 4.0, but it is something that's not too hard to overcome. In terms of Java, if you're using mutable capabilities, that should be just an easy change from desired capabilities to mutable capabilities. I think that's probably it. So again, kind of Simon Stewart said, it should mostly be just a drop-in upgrade, and it's kind of pretty smooth with very tiny. Hopefully nobody was really using the finds by name methods that I mentioned before. I've never actually seen anybody using that in terms of our customers, so hopefully that applies to most of them.
Great. And just again, knowing that we're talking to a bunch of people in the healthcare environment and healthcare industry, Any particular words of advice you want to give to them related to how this type of topic might help them advance their overall test strategy as it relates to healthcare?
So don't do too much UI automation. I think that's a good lesson. It might be funny coming from a Sauce Labs guy, but it's something that as solution architects, we always want to encourage our customers, because we believe that if you guys are successful in all aspects of test automation, from unit to integration to UI, that you'll stick around with us, because you'll see that we provide true value. So that's one of the things that I think, yeah, majority of not only the healthcare industry, but all the industry, we can just do more tests at the lower level, and then the UI tests will become extremely valuable when they run fast, when they run in parallel, when they are atomic.
Sounds great. All right, awesome. So just as a quick plug again for Nikolai, he's one of our solution architects. He's one of the team members that can help you out in terms of looking at the assessments that we're doing an assessment that would help you look at your test strategy and helping you just make sure that you have the right overall strategy and trajectory in place, giving you some help anywhere from looking at your individual tests all the way up through the overall program as a whole.